The Quirklogic Papyr. I've been using Papyr as my primary note-taking device now for several weeks, and I'm just going to run through all of the positives and negatives that I've noticed about it so far. I've been using the Quirklogic Papyr for several weeks now as my primary note taker and my planner for what I do here at school. And I'm going to run through all of my positives and negatives of it in this video. It might take me a little while, but stick with it. I just want to say thank you very much to Quirklogic once again for sending me this device. They haven't required that I do anything in exchange for this device apart from just to give them my feedback. And so it just made sense though for me to do this review for you guys. This isn't a sponsored video, this is my honest thoughts about what I think about the Quirklogic Papyr. I did have a meeting with them, however, to discuss all of my thoughts, my positive thoughts and my negative thoughts about this device. And it actually showed off one of the, I think, the main benefits of this device, because what we had was we had a shared document here on the Quirklogic Papyr, and we could each see, I'll find it, and we could therefore all see the same notes. These were the typed up notes that I sent to them, and we could discuss them, and you can see some of my notes, some of their notes as we go through. And I think that the use of this for meetings is an absolute game changer, especially now as we're doing a lot of like Zoom meetings, and we could look at each other on the screen, but we could talk about the documents that were here on our note-taking e-reader devices. Fantastic. That's the main thing about this device, is collaborating, whether that's on Zoom or whether that's in real life. No more printing paper copies and sending them around the table. This is all here on the e-reader device, and you can annotate as you go through it. You share this basically through their web portal, and they could log in, they could edit and see my changes real time. So we just went through this list and we discussed each point in turn, so some of it is their actual feedback on my feedback, if you like. The short answer, if this video is going to be a bit too long for you to watch the whole thing through, is that I really do love this device. I really buy into what they're trying to do with this e-reader technology. It works massively well as it is, and they're improving it every single month with a new update. So they're improving the software all the time with a new update every single month. It works really well now, but it just keeps getting better, and they are looking out for everyone's feedback as they develop. I think initially, I've said all these first points in my first thoughts video, which you can see here if you haven't seen it already. And so these are my more detailed considerations. It's really light. It's basically as light as a clipboard and paper, and the screen is almost flexible. It really is working towards this paper-like experience. I mean, they've kind of discussed this as being like the size and weight of a magazine, and you can have all of your documents, let's say, so you're a university student, you can have all of your textbooks, all of your class notes on something that is the size and weight of a magazine. It's fantastic. They don't actually have a folio. This is a third-party one. I did ask about that. This third-party one is really quite nice. It's got the little pen loop. But they did say that it doesn't really need a protector. This is a really hard-working and durable screen that doesn't scratch. They said it's been tested by university students extensively, and also by toddlers. So they were talking about their children and playing with it, and it never seems to get a scratch on it. But there is perhaps a folio coming, they hope, in the future. It's got a really nice stylus, and it does feel like paper, the screen. It does link with Google Drive or Dropbox, and the way that really works is that you can import images, or if you make a blank document, this is the way that you import a PDF per se on it, is if you make a blank document, you can import a PDF, and it will make every single page of that PDF the background of that document. So it's a little bit of a strange way of working. You can't actually keep PDFs on it. Every file on this is actually a QLW, a Quirklogic workbook. And so it just makes the background of that file whatever the PDF was. You can insert a PDF, a JPEG or a PNG, and it just becomes a background. I really love the contextual menu, so you can get to anything. For example, if I want to go in here and get the file from Dropbox, then that's where that link comes from. So wherever you are, you can very quickly get the contextual menu, and the contextual menu is different if, for example, you have something selected, you can then copy, change the color, change the line thickness, etc. It's really large, you know, this is almost A4 size. The actual device itself is just that little bit larger than A4. And so the screen is just that little bit smaller, but it's pretty much the A4 size that you'll be used to. Certainly the working area of any document. It's got an infinite zoom. And what I've really loved doing is setting up my planner and then just being able to say, well, I need to make some more notes in this bit, so I can just scroll off to the side, and I add this big extra arrow here to remind me that there is actually some more information over here that I need to look at. I can access anytime. Double tap anywhere brings you back to that kind of standard A4 zoom. So it's like you can have this extra sheets of paper, this whole extra sheet of notes just next to it. It's fantastic. And the live syncing is amazing. It was really useful having that meeting and talking about this. They could see my extra notes as we discussed. They added extra notes, highlighted bits that they were interested in. They still own a copy of this document here that we're looking through, and they can use it as their feedback as well. And I think that was really nice to have the LCD screen showing the faces of the people that I was talking to, so you can kind of look up and see their expressions and everything like that, and then look down at the document and not have to have that, oh, who's sharing the screen? You know, can I share my screen and show who's going to type in this document? Just actually be able to work quite fluidly between the document and the people that you're talking to. I think that was really good. It's a really nice high resolution e-ink display. The screen is what makes this expensive. The screen is a really good thing. Now there is a browser in this, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. I'll be honest with you about the browser. The browser is fine if you just want to go and read a web page because you want to check the news or something on this. I don't know if you would rather do that on here than on your phone, because it would certainly be a bit slicker on your phone, but the browser is there, but it isn't quite doing what I wanted it to do. The reason they've used Chrome on it is because then you could be logged into some of your Google services, but it is crashing, okay? And so I'll be honest with you, it's not quite there with the browser yet. So I suggested just using a lighter Linux browser or something like that. All a browser on a device like this really needs to be able to do is allow you to read web pages and maybe download some PDFs or Word type files that you can use directly on the device. It's great that there's no notifications and no distractions. That's brilliant about e-ink devices that aren't running full Android and having you know, things like WhatsApp or something like that bonging up to interrupt you whilst you're working. The split screen mode is absolutely great. So if I just show you that quickly, it automatically loads up in the same place on either side. It essentially launches two instances of the whole operating system, but what you can now have is you can have your own second set of notes here on the right hand side as to on the left hand side. That's really useful for me when I want to work between my planner here. This is my kind of daily planner of what I'm going to do throughout the day, what I need to get done, and I can still skip around that, go into all the different pages of that. My front page, for example, which, as you can see, I've got all these little notes. Here's the extra bits I was talking about. Need to make some extra notes on the side. And here's where working with e-ink is so great, because I've done that now, so I can cross it off. I've done that, I can just cross it off, and look, it's just deleted. If you're the type of person that likes to delete things from lists, then it's much more satisfying than putting a line through it than just to actually delete it like so. I think that's fantastic. And you can flip between the two views, really easy. And when you decide you want to make one of them full screen, there you go. I did mention that I didn't want to see these user interface elements all the time. Could you just reduce it to 3 dots? But there is a way to do that. There's a hide toolbar mode, so then just go. I also, it sounds really picky, but I would have a lighter grey for these little page turn icons. I don't think they need to be there. It's really nice to be able to mark up student works, and you can choose a different colour for your pen. You can have red, green or blue, or different greys. So if you wanted to mark a student's work in green, then it doesn't show any different on here, but you are working, except it's a bit lighter, you are writing in green pen for them to be able to see their corrections and annotations. And what you could do is then you could email it off this device, and it will email through as a PDF, and it will email to, you can email it to anyone you wanted to. The only thing is, I will say that it only sends it to the email address of the device. You can't input anybody's email address, which would be quite useful to be able to just send it directly to the student from the device. So I made that point. Think about fewer steps, think about just having fewer steps to be able to use it in the way that it's intended. There's also a little bit of an issue, in my opinion, because it only does files in portrait orientation. So I think there's work to be done there. It's absolutely fine because you've got the infinite zoom, so you could have any size of page that you want. But I think that for me, to be able to choose a document as you import it to be landscape or portrait is worth doing. When you export it as a PDF as well, it essentially takes the size of the entire page. So if you have those extra notes, then it will try and shrink that whole thing down with all of that detail into just an A4 size. So I don't think that's perfect for me. So yeah, the color functionality is cool. So you can work in different colors on the web app. I'll perhaps just show that if I open the same document on the web app. Yeah, there's my green corrections down here at the bottom. And if somebody incidentally was wanting to key in that didn't have the device, then you can see they could use this web app to access the same document. And so having the actual physical device is not a prerequisite to actually accessing the notes of the meeting. And you can, for example, if you're on a different device with a pen, you could add notes, and you can also erase by the same web app as well. So that is really, really quite cool. And you don't have to be in the same place, same part of the document as somebody else. See, it is updating about every second, I think, somewhere in that kind of region. I don't see many times, I haven't used many times anything other than the ordinary black and simple size of marker. This is just like a pen basically, and it feels like a ballpoint pen. Whilst I'm here in the web app, I would say that I really thought there'd be a way to actually add sort of text like this, copying notes from Word documents perhaps in that web app. So I think that there's some work to be done on this web app as well. I'll be entirely honest with you. It's pretty much just a viewer and a basic annotator as well. But, they're developing this and it's already fantastic. Waking up from rest is near instant. It's kind of like it's pretty much always on. That is because it's kind of always ready. That is a kind of battery sapping feature. So I wonder about them maybe setting a timeout that you can choose how ready you need it to be. Actually turning it on from absolute scratch is only a few seconds anyway, so it's not a major deal. It's good that you can always insert a new page at any point in any document. There's just plus add a page or delete a page, which will always insert a page anywhere. It doesn't have to go to the end of the document. So things that I'm not so keen on about this device then. And although there aren't that many, you can see that there's loads of things that actually I realized in that discussion that actually no, I was getting something wrong. The plastic, doesn't have the most premium feel. Compared to like the build of an iPad or something like that, this plastic is not the most premium feeling material. However, it is massively lightweight. And I think I'm going to say to you, I would choose the lightweight nature of this. It is trying to feel like a clipboard and paper. It is trying not to be a aluminium and heavyweight device for you to lug around. I said that there's no choice of stylus, right? But something I hadn't realized was there's actually two different types of nib. There's actually a graphite nib and these the palm nibs, and they are slightly different in terms of the way they feel. So actually, although there's only one stylus, there is choice in the way that it feels, and for me this is a really great feeling stylus. So there's no choice of stylus, but it's a great stylus. You've got the highlight function and you've got the erase function button and the normal writing function, and it really does feel like pen and paper. The two different nibs have different feels, so the POM feels more like a pen and the graphite feels more like a graphite pencil. The graphite will wear down a little bit quicker than the others. The black nibs, the POM nibs, they will wear down a little bit less quickly, and that'll feel more like a pen on paper rather than a pencil on paper. You can now buy them in little packs of 10. That's $45 for a pack of 10, but they're not like remarkable nibs where they're going to be wearing down in a matter of weeks. These are sort of months at a time, sort of maybe a quarter of a year, with reasonably heavy use. So I'd really like to see some line styles. You know, you've just got line thickness and line color. I would like to see some kind of line style, something that stylistically looks a little bit textured, maybe a little bit like pencil or a little bit like biro or something like that. Just something to differentiate between those different things. But it's fine, and the handwriting I think does look really quite good. The QLW file format is actually cool, and I like the infinite zoom and things like that, but I wonder does this need to be, everything needs to be a QLW on here? Can some documents, can you choose when you want it to be a QLW to allow you to do all those extra things, and sometimes just leave it in PDF? So for example, when I make a template like like this one as well, that when I make my template like my weekly planner, which has my week's lessons on it that I can just scribble in as I go, what I have to do is make it in Word, then save it as a PDF, and then import it via the web app into here. Great, it works, it's wonderful, but that's 3 different file formats I've had to go through to get onto here. And I think partly this stuff is left over from Quilla, you know, which was the larger, amazing big e-ink device designed to replace flip charts. A lot of these things about the quirks of the way that the software works is really because of that's the way that worked best on the flip chart. So you can understand it. But I think that now they've got this separate device, that a bit of time needs to go into how does this actually work differently and how do people use this differently to that flip chart. There's no pen pressure. It's not a deal breaker for its use, but it means it's never going to be a drawing tablet as well. I do wish that it would allow you to actually rotate documents and import files that were landscape, just detect that's a landscape document and put it in as a landscape document in here. I think that's something that you should probably expect. There are times when the networks drops, it actually signs me out, and this is probably one of the biggest things, because you've got 2 choices of where to store your files. You can store them in the cloud, or you can store them on the device. So you've got your local and you've got your cloud, and the 2 don't meet. So when I am off the internet, I haven't got access to any of these cloud files, and that's where I put the majority of my cloud files. I want them to sync and I want to save them, I want to be able to view them on other devices. If you put them on the local things, if you lose the device, then all those files have gone, so all those notes have gone. So I think I would really like it if there was a kind of middle ground. Maybe you can choose, rather than choose the location, you can choose what the document's doing at different times. Because the reason for them having the cloud documents is because they want that instant sync. And I think that's fantastic, that's a strength of the device. But there's no reason why I couldn't just turn the device into instant sync mode for the duration of a meeting, rather than have to kind of choose, right, I want this document to be a shared document that we're going to have a meeting around and have to have it synced up, rather than most of my files, which are just my notes, that I want to be on the device, access to me whether I'm online or not, and just back up, you know, once every few minutes, once every day even, would be fine. And the fact that you have to leave this on Wi-Fi if you want to use that cloud document means that the battery is constantly being used, and that's the reason why the battery life isn't more than a day. And I think that perhaps some way of getting around that, some choices about the way in which you want the device to work, would be really good. Again, that's left over from the Quilla, because the Quilla was to be set up in a room, one place, and therefore it would always be on Wi-Fi, and also it was designed to be logged in by different people. So maybe if it was in a corporate venue, you could come in there, you log into that, you'd have access to all your files and access to none of the files of the people that were there before you. So I wonder about changing the mode within the file. So when you actually go, oh, this becomes a kind of live sync document when you go into a meeting. There's loads of different ways to do that. Pen latency is great now. You see I've deleted that one because actually the pen latency is pretty much second only to the Remarkable 2, I think. So the prices is going to be an issue. It's going to make it quite a hard sell compared to some of the other devices. But the thing about the price is that any e-ink device of this size is going to be about that price, because if you look at e-ink, who actually make all of these e-ink screens, the cost of these individual screens is massive. Look it up, it might be different to what it is in this video, but the reason why is that the size of these screens mean that the price of the screens is just massive. Small e-reader screens have got pretty cheap because they are produced in massive volume for people like Kindle. But the A4 size large screens like this are only made in 1 or 2 factories in the world, and the volume isn't massive. Price of these devices will come down when there's a bit more mass market acceptance. At the minute, it's not quite there. If you're not getting into this type of system because of the price at the minute, then that's totally understandable, but look towards the future. This hopefully will become cheaper as we go. So I don't think that the Google Drive is seamless. I was really hoping that the Google Drive was going to allow me to have access to the same documents here as via my Google Drive, but really it's just an import or an export function. It's only in or out at any point. And what I'd really like it to be able to do would be just to download PDFs directly from Google Drive at any point, and maybe to save those same files up to Google Drive. At the minute, what you need to do is make a new workbook and then import a PDF into that workbook, and it will become the pages of the blank workbook, which is fine, but you need to know your way around that. Also for the browser, they don't need to have all of the integration with all of the functions of Chrome. You're never going to need to use all of the plugins of Chrome on this device. Chrome is a really memory intensive program now. And so I think that they're better off using something quite simple. And all I really want to be able to do on a browser is just download documents to be able to read directly on the device. So because of that constantly having to be online thing, I was worried about taking it and using it in a building and moving from room to room and to different Wi-Fi access points, and I was worried I was going to get loads of network drops. But actually that hasn't happened, and it's been pretty seamless in school. So if you do find you get network drops, it might well be because of your Wi-Fi rather than this device. But I have actually found that because it's constantly online, it's definitely a charge once per day device. Some way around that would be amazing, perhaps setting your own preferences of how you want it to manage the battery. And also, I've really started to enjoy using this in the classroom. It's really easy to use. You can just make part of your whiteboard that web app sharing your screen. I'd love it if you could make it a full screen in the browser or a landscape, so you can actually fill the entire screen with your notes. But because you don't have to be physically tied to the screen or the computer, you can teach from anywhere in the room, you can walk around, and you can be annotating things as they go. And also people could use the whiteboard themselves to select the pen and make notes on the same document as you, and you could do live corrections of their work. It's cool. And that's what I really want to evaluate, is this Quirklogic paper for teaching. So stick around for my next video where I'll be talking about how I'm actually using this for education purposes. And that's the main advantage of this thing. So I hope that was useful, I hope that was interesting. This is the Quirklogic Papyr. It's a device that I'm loving using. And it's definitely become my go-to device for making my notes. It does what note-taking e-readers should do, which is it gets rid of so much paper. It's a fantastic piece of equipment, and it's got a definite place in your corporate meetings or in your education professional, in your just professional life.